do it perfectly because I'm going to give commentary during it, but that you go back, watch it, and make your cross-exam based on all the stuff we talked about.
Okay.
So just as a review, so what are the things you're going to focus on here?
Background violence, which is George Bailey and the fight with Rashawn, and then his alibi on March 11th, which is, non-existent. How Chris isn't there, nobody from the basketball game can testify where he was. Jimmy Sanders didn't know where he was. This other friend is not here. And then also, I don't know if we're going to go into March 12th, but we can say, like you said, nobody pushes a bunch around. I don't know if we're going to go into that. I might if we have extra time or something like that.
Yeah, I think you should. I mean, I think nobody should push muncher around is an important detail. And the nuggets you need to get in there are that Chris was shot, right?
Right.
And another nugget that you need to get in there is that they had access to a car.
And he says evening the score. Something about evening the score and nobody pushes.
That's important, evening the score.
Yeah, because that's
Who said
more
evening the
revenge.
score?
Egos.
And nobody pushes muncher around.
The other piece of it is, too, that's important, is referencing, and you heard Detective Agos testify in court today, didn't you? And you were here to hear this person testify, didn't you? So, like, as you start, be thinking about what I want to show is, I want to show that this guy is a liar, that he was, here's what I always think of. I think of, and I don't know that this is exactly what you guys want to say, but what helps me to think of is that this kid, he might not have had that gun in his pocket. I don't think he had the gun in his pocket that day thinking he was going to kill Rashawn. I think that this is a kid who's involved with really bad people, who does really bad stuff, as you can tell looking at Adam. And he's kind of a kid that this is the world he's in. He's the kind of kid that puts a gun in his pocket on a Sunday afternoon and walks around Clearwater. That'd be a good thing for a closing argument.
And then he saw Rashawn and just shot him.
And he saw Rashawn. It reminded him of how pissed off he was and embarrassed he was at school the previous week. And so they started messing with him. They started messing with him. They started taunting him. And this kid is so reckless and so violent that he decided he's going to shoot him. And something snapped inside of him, just like it snapped in the lunchroom that day. And he bang, bang, bang,
But
bang.
is he for an opening too, or is that too argumentative?
No, I mean, I think that story can be part of your whole theme story of this kid and his out of control behavior. And, you know, this is what happened that day, right? And keep in mind, you have this tape. Don't
Is
be
this
constantly,
recording right
it's
now?
recording
Okay,
right now,
good.
so don't be constantly writing notes. Be in the moment, okay? Because you can always go back and that'll be helpful.
I'm playing this role. Can I use any persona in life?
Yes, and you can, you're not going to be objected to, but, you know, try to answer within what you think a good Leslie St. Peter would say. So, and I'm going to be interrupting you as you go, just so you know.
Mr. St. Peter, you go to George Bailey Alternative High School, correct?
Yes, that's where I go.
And you got moved to an alternative high school because you were kicked out of your last high school, true?
Yes, they asked me to leave.
And Mr. St. Peter, you were expelled for an exploding toilet incident, correct?
Yeah, that was a little joke I played.
But you were expelled because of this incident.
I was expelled for it.
And Mr. St. Peter, this incident even caused some harm to other people that were using the toilets at this time, true?
It did not actually. 2 people were on the toilets. They were not harmed, just a little stung.
Thank you.
Can I interrupt? I'm going to interrupt. First of all, he did not actually, to be very clear, and you're going to get caught on this by teams that know their materials super well, he didn't get kicked out of his high school. Do you know?
You got suspended that led to expulsion.
Yes, he got suspended. It led to an expulsion, and I believe it was a middle school.
Really?
Look it up. I feel like we've been down this road
I don't
before.
think it was a middle school. I don't think it states that.
I thought that it was in middle school.
I wrote, it doesn't say which school. I'm suspended from school, blah, blah, chemistry, and that's all it says.
So since it doesn't say that, you could have a kid say, no, that was way back in middle school. Right? So be careful with that. Be careful and say, well, yeah, that was way back in middle school, but I've gone to John Bailey or George Bailey since, who is George Bailey? It's probably somebody. There's probably a secret joke. You should
I'll
go
look it up.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I got this.
George Bailey, won't you please come home? There's like a song
I think you should say you were expelled,
Bill, that's Bill
or
Bailey.
you were suspended the using or the use of explosives. That sounds worse.
Yeah,
Than
than saying
saying-
toilets.
You were suspended for exploding toilets. Or you could say you were suspended for using explosives. in
Detonating
school.
explosives at school,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mr. St. Peter, and you got moved to Georgia Bailey because you were expelled from your last school, true?
Yes, I was.
Here, with your hands.
And this was because you were detonating explosives at the school, true?
Oh, no, I wasn't expelled for that. That was back in middle school, they suspended for that. It was a little joke I'm trying.
But you were expelled from your last school because of explosives.
I would, if he said it was just a little joke, I'd be like, so it was a joke to you, exploding things at your school and hurting other kids? Is that your idea of a joke, Mr. St. Peter?
I don't recall anyone getting hurt, so yes. it was
So,
a
Mr.
joke.
St.
Did you
Peter,
make a statement early for this case, Mr. St. Peter?
Yes, I did.
And in that statement, did you not say that several students were actually harmed in the explosives that you detonated at your previous school?
From what I recall, I did not say that. 2 people were on the toilets, but they were not harmed. We should do that after.
no one was sitting on the toilet. No one, I don't think anybody.
I thought
2
it
people
said
were
that.
on there, but it doesn't say if they were
Yeah,
harmed or
I
not.
think
Oh,
they
in all
were.
but 2 of the incidents resulting in my suspension, no one was sitting on the toilet.
In all but 2.
Yeah, it was a long run.
In two of the occasions, there were kids, in fact, in the room where you exploded objects, including toilets. Isn't that correct, Mr. St. Peter?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so technically I was right. Ha! But
No, you said
that's
they got
important.
hurt.
In all but 2. So there were more than 2, weren't there, Leslie?
No, in all but two, no one
but
was.
2.
So there
It's
was
only
2.
That's
In
right. So meaning there were other incidents.
Oh.
This was not, and that wasn't an isolated incident, was it, Leslie?
Could you define that? By
It
isolated?
means, Leslie, you didn't just do this once. You did this multiple times, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a pretty
In fact, it was a pretty funny joke, wasn't it, Leslie? Yeah, you should dream of somebody saying that. Because then, it was a funny joke, wasn't it, Leslie?
Even the people who were on the toilets that told me it was kind of funny. They
Yeah.
really didn't see it.
Really,
female
they thought it
scores
was
too?
funny when they got hurt.
Okay,
They
let's
didn't.
stay focused, Okay, but that, like, taking that and knowing that there were more than 2 incidents that this kid was doing this, and this is not an isolated incident. This wasn't one time. It led to an expulsion. It was a suspension, and then ultimately, it was so serious, wasn't it, that school officials expelled you from school, didn't they?
Well, according to the rules, yes, I had to use it.
Okay. Alright.
Go back and do it.
Okay. So, Leslie St. Peter, you go to an alternative high school, correct? And this was because you got expelled from your last school, true?
Yes, I was expelled from my
And you were expelled from this last school because of an incident involving explosives. Is this correct?
I was suspended for that, and eventually I was expelled.
And there were more than one case of this expulsion. Or there's more than one case of this explosive, wasn't there?
Let's say it differently. In fact, but this wasn't your first. This wasn't the first time you got in trouble for doing these kinds of things, did you? In fact, there were multiple incidents in which you were using explosives at your school, weren't there?
Yes, I believe there were about 4.
Fight her on it. Don't agree to that and make her impeach you on it. So go back and do it again.
You want me to start back in the beginning? Mr. St. Peter, you go to an alternative high school, correct?
Yep.
And this is because you got expelled from your last high school, correct?
I believe I got expelled from my last middle school, and I chose to go to Georgia Bailey.
And the reason you were expelled was due from a suspension from.
Stop. Starting.
And you were.
When you get nervous and you don't know what to say, your hands go up like this and you start doing this. So, you got this. You got it. Go back and think about what do you want to say. You want to say, and you got expelled because of multiple incidents of this behavior, correct? Like, so think about like being slow and multiple incidents of similar behavior. And in fact, in 2 of those incidents, kids were actually hurt, weren't they? You know, so just being like, sometimes it helps to just slow it down and like bang it like a nail.
Mr. St. Peter, you go to an alternative high school, correct?
Yes, I did.
And this was because you were expelled from your previous high school, correct?
I don't believe I was expelled from my previous high school. From
Mr.
what I recall, I was
Mr. St.
expelled from middle school.
Mr. St. Peter, you were expelled from your last school, correct?
Yes, I will.
And you were expelled due to a suspension involving explosive, correct?
Yeah, I believe that's right. It was quite a while.
And Mr. St. Peter, there were many similar cases of this same incident, wasn't there?
Yes, there were about 3.
And all but 2 of them involved people sitting on the toilets, correct? Involved harming people. yeah. And all but 2 of these incidents involved potentially harming people, true?
Potentially harm people. No one was harmed in any of these incidents.
I want you to go back and ask that again. How, what are you trying to say? You're trying to say he hurt people, correct? And you hurt people in these, you hurt people when you used these explosives at school, didn't you? In fact, at least 2 people were harmed, weren't they? So just say that. Just say that.
And in fact, 2 of these incidents,
Yes.
and in fact, in 2 of these incidents, people actually got hurt, correct?
In none of the incidents, someone got hurt. 2 of the incidents, there were people sitting on the toilets, but they were not harmed.
I would say, so you're telling us here today, Mr. St. Peter, that you used explosives in the toilet at your school, and in 2 of those incidents, kids were sitting on those toilets, and it is your testimony in court today that those kids weren't harmed?
Yes, that is my testimony. They weren't like dynamite, and little firecrackers, and water doesn't hold explosive power. If anything.
But, so then you got to ask it differently, right?
Right.
So go back and ask it again. This is exactly what I did to Elizabeth the other night. So I'm not pounding you any harder than I hit her. So, yeah, I didn't actually hit her. Adam was here. It was on tape.
Leslie St. Peter, you go to an alternative high school, correct?
Yes, I did.
This is because you got kicked out of your last school, correct?
No, I chose to go to the alternative high school, but yeah, I was kicked out of school.
And you were expelled due to similar instances involving explosives, correct?
Oh yes, I put some small firecrackers in the toilet and then
Mr. St. Peter, you were expelled due to explosives, correct?
So that's,
I told you.
just
So
say,
that's a yes.
so that's a yes. You used explosives at school. Just be calm, Brooke. Be calm. Be chill. Be chill.
Be like Fonzie, that's Fonzie.
So that's correct, Mr. St. Peter. You were expelled from your previous school due to explosives?
Due to your use of explosives. You do that kind of a lot where you kind of skip over a little clause in a sentence, due to explosives, or due to your use of explosives.
And in fact, 2 out of these instances involved people potentially getting harmed.
No.
Correct?
In 2 of these incidents, people were actually harmed, weren't they? You make it too complicated. You're kind of just, and in fact, in at least 2 of these incidents, kids at your school were actually harmed because of your violent behavior, weren't they? So, did you make a statement for this case, Mr. St. Peter? And in that statement, you actually stated that on at least 2 occasions, and at least 2 of them, there were kids sitting on toilets that you put explosives in at the time. Correct? You said that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I would walk away from it and don't fight with him about it. You're actually kind of good, Leslie. Don't get your big head.
No emotion.
No, I think I'm a terrible lesbian.
Alright.
Don't contradict
And after moving to George Bailey Alternative High School, you've had a couple problems there, haven't you?
me.
No, it's actually
Say
quite
it
a
stronger.
pleasant school.
Say it
At
stronger.
George Bailey, you actually got in a fight once, didn't you?
You've also had a lot of trouble at George Bailey, haven't you? You know, just
Mr. St. Peter, you've actually had a lot of trouble at George Bailey too, haven't you?
I can't believe I have that.
You got in a fight with Rashawn Anderson, isn't this true?
are there other things too? Are there? What other things does he talk about with, like, he loves killing bunnies, or he's...
He wants to kill ducks because they're yellow.
And there's-
Rubber ducks. He doesn't say real duck. Rubber. He wants
What
to
else does he
decapitate
say?
them.
He doesn't
Point out
really
that
say.
Rashawn
Oh, he
Anderson's
plays
yellow
violent
eyes.
video games, but I don't even know if I want to talk
A
about
lot of people play.
Yeah, but
Typhoid
I play
thing,
violent video games.
touches stuff.
Does
where-
it say they're violent video games, or the names just sound violent?
Which is one happens to be at night in New York, and cabs turn into rolling mouse energy and to make them stop.
They turn into mouse
Okay.
intestines.
Stay on this, stay on this. Let's not get distracted by that. Is there anything,
I hate yellow things, blah, 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 ducks float in the back of the shop should be beheaded. Traffic lights that tell me to go much faster right now. Butchie punches people. Butchie hits people.
who's Butchie?
Butchie's Garmin.
They call him Butchie and Puncher?
Okay, his name is
Butchie.
his name is Garmin Forsted Winkle, and people call him Butchie, but he doesn't like that name, so people call him Puncher, and Butchie hits people.
I just call him Garmin, you know. I have a friend named. His,
Are they
his-
friends?
No.
Just a classmate, he says.
He doesn't say they are or they're not.
I don't even know why he would talk about him in here.
But
Leslie-
you can say that. You
Case
can say you're friends
convenience.
with Garmin Horsewinkle, and his name is Puncher because he punches people.
Yeah, relevant. What's the title of
I
the?
don't think you're gonna win that if you say it.
How is the title of a a classmate relevant to this case at all?
I just don't know if you can get all that in. And I don't know if bringing up the chopping off the heads of little rubber duckies. I mean,
I don't think it's worth it for
Well, but you guys,
Let's try it right
We-
now.
we
and see
gotta-
how it sounds.
we gotta do something, right? You gotta bring some stuff up. And I just think if we automatically discount it, we might be missing it. Because we just sort of, oh, we don't like that, right?
Just try it right
What
now
if
and see
we-
how it sounds.
Leslie, you like violent video games, don't you? Leslie, you like to play video games, don't you?
Yeah, I like it.
In fact, you spent almost the entire day at your friend Chris Sanders on March 11th, 2012, playing video games.
Yeah, but I know it. It's good.
And you love video games about, with action in them and violence,
I
correct?
wouldn't say I love them. Yes, they are entertaining. But every once in a while, I sit down and
I want to say this on video. Nerd. Okay, with the nerd. Okay. I mean, and that would be a good response, actually, if you said that for Leslie. But it doesn't matter what his answer is, right? It doesn't matter what his answer is. And you love violent video games, too, don't you?
I love them as much as any other video.
Games about dead rats, right? You wrote
Dead
about
mice,
this.
not
Dead
rats.
mice, right? Games about inner city, what does it say?
And maybe
Can I see
it
that?
happens at night.
Can I have that? In fact, some of your favorite video games are called things like Typhoid Mangy Touches Stuff and Weremouse Night Cabbie Speed Freaks Part 6. These are some of the video games you really love, isn't it?
I wouldn't say they're my favorites. More of Chris's favorites, and I play with them. He's a pretty cool cat.
And those are the games that you mostly played, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
was
it's his
pretty
house.
cool cat.
And and you also talk in the statement that you made before court about how you want to shoot rubber duckies and rip their heads off. Didn't you write about that?
Yellow, and it's a disgusting color.
So your answer is yes, that's what you wrote about in your statement that you prepared before court
I do
today?
not like yellow rubber ducks. That is true.
And you said, in the statement you prepared for court today, you said that you think that they should be shot and beheaded. Isn't that what you said, Mr. St. Peter? I kind of think you have to bring it up. I think you have to bring it up.
Does it say they should be shot?
Yes, it says
Go ahead.
ducks that float in the bathtub and should be shot and beheaded.
And should-
Also, you said that traffic lights tell you to go much faster right now. Isn't that right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Yellow things
because
that
when
you-
it's a yellow light,
Well, that's
people
because
go faster to get through it instead of stopping.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
ask about that. I wouldn't ask about that.
Mr. St. Peter, you're a reckless.
Okay, go back. Go back. I want you to go back and I want you to ask him about these video games. Ask him about, because I think that if you're building up that this kid is violent, that he is kind of off the hook a little bit, and you're probably going to get a kid like Elizabeth on the stand asking about these things, as opposed to a kid who's playing it like Adam, and Adam would be great, right? Because he's kind of got that kind of punky attitude.
I asked a video game question and I asked about him with Chris. I feel like lots of they playing video games.
You love video games, don't you? In fact, you love violent video games. Some of your favorite video games are called Typhoid Mangy Touches Stuff.
Still mangy.
M-A-N-G-I-E. Mangy. Mangy?
I remember I was
Okay, Adam, put it away. Exactly. Okay. Ask him the violence question, just those questions about his.
Mr. St. Peter, you were at Chris's house the majority of March 11th, true?
Yeah, we love it.
And-
And his house live.
And you guys were playing video games that day, weren't you?
Yeah.
And you like a lot of video games with violence in them, don't you?
You love to play video games, don't you?
And you love to play video games, don't you, Mr. St. Peter?
Yeah, that's what
In
we
fact-
needed, ride my bike.
In fact, you love video games with violent settings, don't you?
Yes, every once in a while we play a violent video game.
And
Play other genres,
Mr.
too.
St.
Da.
Peter,
Don't be so aggressive. Don't. But you gotta take your opportunity to let him, because if you come off like then it just, he's gonna say, oh, I like video games, but I blah 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 blah. Say, you've got your next question. You know what you're gonna ask him. Go back, ask it.
Mr. St. Peter, you were at Chris Sanders' house on March 11th, 2012. Is this correct?
I probably was, yeah, that was
And for a majority of the day, you guys were playing video games, weren't you?
Yeah, we usually do that.
Mr.
But-
St. And Mr. St. Peter, you love video games, don't you?
I love a lot. What game could you do?
And on top of loving video games, you play a lot of games with violent plots, don't you?
I wouldn't say that. Yes, I do play games with violent plots, but I play all the time.
And Mr. St. Peter, some of your favorite games include Typhoid Mangy Touches Stuff and Where Mouse Night Cabby Speed Freak 6. Is this correct?
I wouldn't say they're my favorites, but yes, I play them.
And I would, when I say those names, I would make them sound as freaky and weird as you can. So go back and say them again, and say them slow and pause between them.
And you play games with titles like Typhoid Mangy Touches Stuff and Where Mouse Night Cabby Speed Freaks 6. Is this true?
Play them.
You play those type of video games with Chris Sanders.
Yeah, he likes that kind of stuff. I just play with him. Talk to him.
I
You
know,
made
but
your
it's
point.
like-
You made your point. Yep, keep going. Keep going.
And Mr. St. Peter, you were getting ready to leave your house around
Oh, you missed the stuff about the
the
ducks.
dusk.
Right there.
And in fact, you
And you wrote a statement before court, didn't you?
you wrote a statement for this trial. Is this true?
Yeah, I believe it's called an affidavit.
And in this affidavit,
And you knew that that was a formal, official court document, didn't you, Mr. St. Peter?
and you knew this was a formal document that would be used in court, true?
Whatever.
And Mr. St. Peter, in this document, you state yellow things I hate include mustard.
No. Don't go through all that. You say, but even so, you decided to include in that statement that you think rubber duckies should be shot and beheaded. These were the words that you chose to use in this document, wasn't it?
Yeah, those would be words that you. Let's think about even Swahili.
It'd be so great if you had a Rashawn like that. Leslie, it's just a punk, because I think it would play kind of good, actually. And to be,
Does he have a spot on his side?
yeah, he does.
Yeah, you some of that.
Okay. That wasn't that bad, honestly.
Go ahead.
And do you want me to do the thing? And Mr. St. Peter, before coming to court today, you wrote an affidavit, true?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
And this was an official and formal statement. Is this true? And even so, you state that rubber duckies should be shot and beheaded. Those were your exact words, weren't they?
That they should be shot. They're creepy, man. You see a rubber duck trying to take a bath, floating in the water, looking at you.
Keep going.
And so, moving on, Mr. St. Peter, You got a call from a friend on March 11th, around 3. Is this true?
No, did not get a call from a friend of mine.
But you were going to meet a friend at a basketball game around 3. Is this correct?
Yeah, it was actually.
So you were getting ready to leave, and you guys grabbed your jackets and you got in the car. True?
It was pretty warm that day. I don't think we grabbed any jackets. And yeah, we did.
You
jump
said you
in.
were grabbing your jacket.
I did.
Yes. Well, you were wearing a jacket for that. And you grabbed your jackets before you left. Is this true?
Yeah, I grabbed my nice orange jacket. I wear
And
it basketball game.
You
Top
didn't.
of my green car.
And you did, but you didn't tell Jimmy Sanders you were leaving, did you?
Mrs. Sanders.
Oh, you didn't tell Mrs. Sanders you were leaving, did you?
Mrs. Sanders trusts us very much, and we are able to leave the house pretty well.
And you got back.
You gotta make that point harder. What's the point of asking that?
That you grabbed his jacket, or that you left and didn't tell Jimmy Sanders. So Miss Sanders didn't know where you were from 3 to 4. Is this true?
I don't know if she knew.
Right, you
Yeah,
can't
that's
ask him
her.
that,
Right.
like what she knew.
So you didn't tell Jimmy Sanders you were leaving from 3 to 4. True?
No, I didn't.
But
Oh,
you
wow.
were not at the house after 3 o'clock that day, correct?
No.
You were gone from the house, and the people you say you were with were Chris Sanders, correct? Your friend Chris, and you say you were with a friend, another friend that you are unwilling to name. Isn't that correct? Or were unwilling to name for police. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and this friend doesn't want me to tell you.
This friend wouldn't want to be involved in a case where you are, according to you, mistakenly identified as a murderer, even though they could offer you an alibi. Is that what you're testifying?
Well, fair weather friend.
I would say that is a bad friend if he is unwilling to testify he was with you. Now, you wouldn't be able to do that. And then you went to the basketball game, correct?
Yeah, I did.
But there isn't a single and Chris was shot a few months ago, wasn't he? Your good friend Chris?
Chris was shot. Thank you for bringing that
So
up.
Chris is not here to testify that you were together, correct?
Well, unfortunately, no.
And
We
Mrs.
really
Sanders
suspect-
doesn't know where you were, correct?
I'm not a clairvoyant, counsel. I don't know what she knows.
But you didn't tell her before you left, right? And this fair weather friend of yours isn't here to testify about where you were that day, correct? And Leslie, you're also aware that there hasn't been a single witness to that basketball game who has come forward and told the police that they ever saw you at that basketball game, correct?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And you haven't heard any testimony from anybody from that basketball game that they saw you there that day, have you?
That's bad.
So you gotta hit that. Like you gotta ask. I just feel like you're not asking little questions. Like I feel like almost this whole thing that we've done is gone back and made you like take small little bites. Like you're trying to build a picture that this guy is a liar. And yes, you gotta get through certain things, but there are lots of little questions to ask along the way. Okay? So go back and ask those.
Starting at.
After the rubber ducky.
So, on March 11th of 2012, around 3 o'clock, you were getting ready to leave for a basketball game, correct?
Yeah, I was going to friend.
And you grabbed your coat and you guys jumped in the car and you drove to the high school, correct?
I won't say the joke, but yeah, we got the car.
And you returned home around 4 p.m., true?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So, Mr. St. Peter, the only person with you during this time was Chris Sanders and this friend, true?
Yeah, that is true.
And Chris Sanders is not in court today, is he?
Unfortunately, he's dead. I didn't really expect that to happen.
Mr. St. Peter, and this was because Chris Sanders was shot last summer, true?
Yeah, he was shot at the Summerfest enjoying it.
So I think you're going to get objected to if you ask it that way. Because you said, Chris isn't in court today, right?
Right, you see him?
Right. And so instead of saying, Chris was shot last summer, wasn't he? And that's why he's not here. And you're asking it the opposite. You're saying, Chris isn't here, right? Because he was shot. You give him a chance to object. If you say, Your Honor, I am laying foundation to establish why Chris isn't here. Well, if you do it the opposite way, we already know Chris isn't here. You don't need to establish foundation for it. So you're going to get the shooting in if you ask first. Chris was shot last summer, wasn't he? And he's not, so he can't testify for you. Mhm.
So, Chris Sanders was shot last summer, true?
Yeah, unfortunately, he was
Is that a
shot.
yes to my question? He was shot? Alright. And he cannot be in court today to testify on behalf of Penny.
No, you can't.
And Mr. St. Peter, this other friend that you supposedly met in the basketball game isn't here either.
No, he's not. I don't care what it is.
And Mr. St. Peter, nobody that was at that basketball game is here in court today, are they?
I feel like you need to ask another question about that friend who's not here.
And this friend didn't want to get involved in the charge. And this friend didn't want to get involved.
So you claim that there was a third person with you, but it is your claim here in court today that your loyalty to maintaining the secrecy of who this person was is so vital to you that you would risk going to prison, even if that is the only person that you're saying was with you? Is that what you're testifying? That I mean, I just feel like you have to point out how ludicrous that is. Like, it doesn't matter to me exactly what you say. I've asked it a couple different ways. And I expect you to go back through this video and watch it and write it so that you're seeing the way that is best for you to say it. But I don't think you can just say, and that person isn't in court today either, are they? Like, well, then we're through that. We don't know, why is that a big deal? Right? Go back and start again.
So, you left with Chris Sanders and went to this basketball game, true?
Yeah.
You end it with true. You say true a lot. You end a lot of your questions with true, true. And I remember judges giving you that feedback, so work on that.
Is this correct, Mr. St. Peter?
Yeah.
And this supposed friend that you met there isn't in court today, is he? And Mr. St.
And
Peter,
she's not in court because
And she's not in court because she wanted to keep her identity a secret. Isn't that true?
Yeah, the person is very dear to me, and I don't want him to be hurt by her.
you gotta play this like it's ridiculous.
And Mr. St. Peter, this person's secrecy is more important to you than possibly getting charged with attempted first-degree intentional homicide. Is this correct?
This person is very dear to me.
Is that a yes to my question? Is that
I mean, it doesn't matter what he says. That's why you have to design it so that it doesn't matter what he says. So you're saying, just listen to the way that I'm asking it. And don't just listen to the topic. Listen to the way that I'm asking it. Because sometimes the way that I phrase it kind of can make them, either force them into an answer, or it says so much that it doesn't matter what his response is. Leslie, you claim that there were 2 other people with you on March 11, 2012, correct?
Yes.
And yet, neither of those people is in court today willing to test or able to testify that they were with you that day. Is that correct?
Correct.
Chris isn't here because Chris was shot a few months ago. Isn't that correct?
Uh-huh.
And this other unknown person has never been named, have they, Mr. St. Peter? And they haven't been named because you, according to your statement, refuse to name them. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And that's because you are so honorable that you are unwilling to reveal the name of this secret basketball attendee to protect them. Is that what you're doing, Mr. St. Peter? You're protecting the secrecy of your friend who went to a public basketball game with you that day? Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, I'd say I'm fairly sure it's not.
Now, you also are aware, are you not, that not a single person who attended that basketball game on that day is here in court today willing to state that they even saw you at that basketball game. You're aware of that, aren't you, Mr. St. Peter?
Yeah,
So, first of all, I was like, it's a public basketball game and you're going to keep this super big secret, right? And also, did you, remember how I talked last week about the way you tell a story? And sometimes what you do is you leave the pause. Not a single person, Mr. St. Peter, is willing to testify that this secret friend of yours who attended a public high school basketball game is here to testify, are they? So I'm giving the jury a moment to process what I'm saying, right? So try that rhythm a little bit. So try that series of questions a little bit. See what you can do with that.
So, Mr. St. Peter, you went to this basketball game with Chris Sanders, correct?
Yeah. That's well.
And you met some unnamed friend at this basketball game, correct?
You claim.
And you claim you met some unnamed friend at this basketball game, correct?
Yeah, it was one of Chris's friends. He went into the hospital and I waited in the car.
And Mr. St. Peter, now, Chris Sanders is in court to testify on behalf of you because he was shot last summer. Is this correct?
Yeah, unfortunately he was murdered. So.
And Mr. St. Peter, this other friend that you claim to have met at the basketball game isn't in court today either because you claim that you wanted to keep them a secret. Is this true?
No, I never claimed that.
But but Mr. St. Peter, you wanted them to be.
You didn't let him answer though. Give him look. Give him a second, because you're not losing. I feel like you're worried that you're going to lose if he says anything. Let him say it, and listen to what he says, and then go back. So say it again.
So, Mr. St. Peter, this other person that you supposedly met at the basketball game.
My affidavit
What does it say?
just says you went to pick up a friend. It doesn't say anything.
But didn't you say? It doesn't say somewhere that he refuses to give the name of this person.
In Carrie Lagos' thing.
Yeah, you could get caught on that.
that.
You look annoyed, Brooke. Are you annoyed? Go to bed. Should we talk bad about her while she's gone since the video? And plus, so she would watch it.
Yeah.
Brooke, you're very good at being a lawyer. You are very good at it, but I can see you're freaking out, and I can see that you're really stressed out. And you know what? I'm kind of glad, because you're better when you're scared. So be scared and be better, okay? Stick to it.
So he's
Yeah, be scared. She's better when she's scared. You're better when you're scared. I know you can hear us because you're going to watch this whole thing. Why don't you do a dance or something? That'd be funny. And she'll watch it later and be like, and we'll know whether she actually watched it. Just stand up and do a, that's what would make it so great.
I'm not gonna do it again. So.
Come on.
I think Andrew dance.
Do a
like
dance.
it.
Dance monkey, right there. Do it for the camera.
No, I'm self-conscious.
What?
It's so dance. Why don't
You're in show choir.
Yeah, but that's what
We're trying to do things for Brooke's video because she's in the bathroom right now and she's gonna watch this later and
I think she kind of
outside.
figured out. Adam, why don't you dance?
I know. I was trying to get him to.
Neither can I.
So this
My
entire.
legs fell asleep. You can't move them now.
Aren't you in show choir?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. You can't bear it. Not the whole. Not the.
You were in front of the musical.
Do the main.
We didn't learn your voices until like the last week.
Somebody spelled ours to go around. I like your outfit. Which one? The one. Yeah. Most of the bikini. But that's a touchdown.
This guy?
You're a good reporter.
He doesn't look 50.
That's a touchdown. What are all these ideas for?
PSR. Oh, for Anne. What is it? For Anne Summerfield. I can't imagine another life without her. Why? You've never been the kind of soldier who would disobey a direct order. That's about to change right now. Because here, you are gripping the cold and pitted plastic of the steering wheel of a stolen Wolf Land Rover. The Wolf is loaded with bullets, and you are staring into the barrels. 2 SA-80 rifles. Those L-85 individual weapons Ah, what have stopped you driving the wolf through the barracks exit barrier? In the bright midday sunlight, the barrier's tattered candy stripe is still the most colourful thing among a swath of brown earth and dirty grey guard posts and the centuries' khaki uniforms.
Should I correct this one?
I don't think you should mess with anything PSR has done.
It's bothering me.
Huh?
It's
Did you see that Paul wrote an apology on your behalf, which is the apology you should have written?
Where?
Okay.
Alright.
I did look up George Bailey, by the way. Well, the biggest thing that I could find about George Bailey was that he was a character in It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Is that like
I
an
hate
old
that.
people joke?
Such an
Yes,
annoying-
the case writers always put stupid old people jokes.
That was actually really.
Get this though, there was actually a part where
No, he was a good
no, he was the best guy. In fact, the reason why he in
Anyway, okay, here we go.
Alright, so where should we start from?
Asking him about his people he was with that day. There's nothing wrong with your face.
Mr. St. Peter, you left your house around 3 p.m., true?
Uh-huh.
And before you left, you grabbed your jacket and you got into the Sanders car, correct?
Yeah, I grabbed my orange jacket and got into the green car.
And Mr. St. Peter, you went to the basketball game to pick up some friends. Is this true?
Yeah, Chris wanted to pick up a friend, and I just waited in the car. And my car was
So according to you, you were with
So according to you, you were with 2 people, correct?
down there. One person. I was with Chris. I never actually did meet the other friend.
Yes, go with it then. Keep going.
Okay. So Chris is the only person that knew where you were from 3 to 4, correct?
To my knowledge, yeah. I don't know if anyone else.
And Chris Sanders is not in court today, is he? Chris Sanders is not in court today because he was shot last summer,
Yeah.
correct? I was.
Oh, okay. Yes, unfortunately, he was shot. We weren't really expecting it. It was at summertime. Not a big place.
Keep
to
going,
shot.
Brooke.
I don't know what I can ask about the whole alibi thing after that. So you didn't tell Jamie Sanders you were leaving, did you?
No, I don't think
And
he
you
did.
returned back home around 4.
But Brooke, how are you forgetting to follow up with, so the only person who you claim could give you an alibi that afternoon is dead, right? And you claim that you went to a basketball game, but there isn't a single person that attended that basketball game.
But he said he didn't go inside the basketball game.
I didn't go inside.
That's why
Nobody outside the school saw you, nobody driving by, no one identified you. So you have no one to speak for where you were between 3 and 4 o'clock. If that's what he says, you've got to find a way to do it. You are leaving off the reinforcing questions. You just want to boom, boom, boom. And I'm a little frustrated because I feel like I've asked this question and modeled it for you like 3 or 4 times now, and I feel like you're not picking up on it. So we're going to move forward, and you need to watch this video, go back, and think through what is the rhythm of these questions that I need to ask. How do I, because you need to hit very hard that this kid is violent, that nobody knows where he was that day, he has no alibi, right? I mean, those are really critical components here, right? Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's about it then. Because we asked about their behavior about the George Bailey and the Wigan games
Mhm.
and the deputies
Okay.
and his alibi.
Okay. I read in your countenance that you are frustrated. And that is okay with me, that you are frustrated, Brooke. Because you need to work on this. And I know that it will get better. I have watched you go through this before, Brooke. This is not my first rodeo with Brooke Grams in this exact position. You've been in this position in the past, and what I know happens to you, Brooke, is that if you feel like you're letting me down, you feel shitty. Don't show your hands up. You just swore. You are not letting me down. I am not worried that you are going to get this. I know you're going to get it because I know mock trial means a lot to you. If you were a different kid, I would be worried. But I also know you kind of need me to kick your ass right now. And I am, okay? I'm not, it's not because I don't think you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it, right? But this is what you need tonight, okay?
Yeah.
So you need to go back and watch this tape. You need to really kind of just pump yourself up a little bit about it. And then what's gonna happen is, I know what's gonna happen. Later this week, you're gonna show it to me and it's gonna be awesome and you're gonna feel really good about it, okay? So that's what happens with Brooke Rams. I've walked this road with you before, okay? All right, so let's shut this off.